Big businesses look to us for specialist insurance solutions. Do you? 85 of the top 100 JSC listed companies trust us to protect their businesses. Celebrating 100 years of insurance. Good and proper then, now, and always.
Cybercrime was ranked in the top 3 global risks by the World Economic Forum this year, and it's turned out to be a pretty accurate one. But it's not only big corporates who are being targeted. Small businesses are seen as easy pickings, as many either don't recognize cyber as a threat or don't have the resources and the knowledge to protect themselves. My studio guests will talk about the biggest risk areas and what you can do about them. They are Simon Coleman, Executive Head of Digital Distribution of SHA, Specialist Underwriters, Colin Thornton, Managing Director of Dial & Nerd and Twitter Networks, and McLeod Barrell, Co-founder and General Manager of IT Security Consultancy, CyberSafe. Gentlemen, welcome. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about.
Thank you.
Simon, you first. In what ways can cybercrime cause loss to a small business?
Well, I think, when you read about cybercrime generally, you're sort of thinking banks, insurance companies, big businesses. And they actually tend to recover a lot faster from these things because they've got the right security in place, the right backup measures. Yeah. But for a small business, that could be devastating. They could be left without systems even for 2 or 3 days. Just think about a B&B or something like that. You can't take bookings for 3 or 4 days, maybe in a busy time. So there's a financial loss associated with being hacked.
And as a worst case scenario, the going concern problems.
Absolutely, and I mean then you've got your liability issues as well. So being sued by a customer because the details got stolen.
None of us want that.
Yeah.
Okay, so McLeod, do you think that small businesses are more vulnerable than big corporates? They certainly seem to be, but why is it that they don't see this as a serious threat?
Well, most definitely. I think the main issue at hand with the smaller businesses is a lack of awareness. All right, they think, we're not a huge corporate, they're not going to come after us. But the simple fact of the matter is so long as you've got a computer system that is breaking out to the internet, you are vulnerable. And I think, the reason they are more vulnerable compared to the bigger corporates is that the bigger corporates do have IT teams. They are at least savvy in a certain circumstance of the threats that they are facing or faced with. And the smaller guys, they don't have either the capital to afford good solutions in place to prevent such issues, but also, as I touched on before, the lack of awareness opens them up to being vulnerable.
But do you think that so obviously the SME sector is at risk, but are there particular industries which are more at risk, Colin?
We've got thousands of SME customers across all industries, and as I was saying to Simon earlier, we now deal with ransomware and hacking incidents on a weekly basis, and it's across all industries. There's absolutely no thread or highs or lows. It's just across the board.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into some of those big risk areas. It seems that you can categorize them into 4 areas: data theft, phishing, ransomware, and the new one, Internet of Things connectivity. So we're going to work through those, about where the biggest risks are and what to do about it. Data theft. Is it more likely to be an internal job?
I don't know if it's more likely to be an internal job, but I think there's specific businesses that are targeted for data theft. You're not going to hit you're not going to go for the local restaurant or fish and chip shop because they don't have that kind of information.
Maybe banks and insurance companies.
Well, an insurance broker, if you drill it down to SMEs, so an independent broker, an estate agent, they've been targeted. Small firms of attorneys, they keep a lot of sensitive information. So I think data theft, I don't know if you guys agree, but that to me would be a more focused thing than say ransomware.
Let me ask you, but what do hackers do with the client information that they take from an estate agent? What do they do with it?
Well, there's 2, and we're sort of getting into some of the categories you just mentioned, but traditionally hackers aren't doing anything with it. They're ransoming it. They're locking it down, and they're saying to the owner of that data, if you don't pay me, I will not unlock your data. Unfortunately, lately we've been seeing more incidents of cases where they are actually taking the data. and threatening to release it to the public or use it for nefarious purposes if they don't pay. So there's been a shift. Like what you see in movies is the traditional hack. They steal your data, they have your data somewhere, and they do something with it. That actually wasn't happening in reality, but it's starting to happen in reality now.
Okay, so what does the small business do if they've been hacked and they've lost data, separate from ransomware? What do they do?
I suppose it's quite an open-ended question in the sense that they first need to have the awareness to understand that they are vulnerable to have an attack in the first place. If they do, then likely they need to contact someone who is able to assist them in that regard. In that instance where they do have their data, let's say, encrypted, or they are extorted, if it is a small business, I don't really see them having huge sensitive information such as medical records. Maybe perhaps they do. But I think the best thing to do is first and foremost get help. You know, you really do need to get help.
So this is where you call a friend or you dial a nerd.
Exactly.
And how do you prevent this? I mean, you get all these antivirus software packages. Is that going to be enough for small businesses, small consultancies?
Not anymore, no. It used to be. I mean, when I started Dial a Nerd, a huge part of our business was viruses. And viruses were stopped by antivirus programs sometimes, but they were also not that serious. And at the time, everyone thought they were serious. But looking at the latest scourge of hacking and ransomware, they actually weren't that serious. It's all relative. There are lots and lots of people, as Mac was saying, lots of people that don't have the awareness. There's lots of people that just have antivirus and they are sleeping well at night.
Okay, so if that's not enough, then what does a small business do?
So there's lots of things, and corporates, again, as Max said, corporates are able to afford bigger and better hardware, but there is hardware, firewall, software, endpoint security, all sorts of tools which are available to SMEs and that are cheaper. And yes, they may not do as good a job, but they're enough for most SMEs. So in answer to your question, antivirus used to be okay. Now you need antivirus, you need a firewall, you need other types of software in the network.
Yeah, so basic sounds like that this is a case where you need an outsourced specialist, even as a small business. You have to have
I think there are too many small business owners, independent practitioners, that are just downloading free antivirus software. It's never updated. And I saw a report a couple of weeks back where some of the antivirus packages that were being downloaded were actually the malware itself. So you'd be on a website, you'd get a message popping up saying, you've been infected, download this now to fix it. So, but I also want to touch on, that prevention is obviously key, but what we see quite often is that there are no backups. So they invest occasionally in the preventative measures, but you might not be able to stop the attack. Just because you've got a anti-theft system in your car doesn't mean it's not going to get stolen. And I think we need to remember that there's no silver bullet for cyber. And so you've got a backup as well, just in case you need to restart. Okay,
want to get on to phishing. What is the difference between phishing and spear phishing?
Well, I suppose if you're an Amazonian local, you'd prefer spear phishing. That tends to be more successful.
Oh, that's so clear.
The straightforward dictionary, I guess, definition would be phishing is more a broad type of, how could you say, attack or approach to. Yes, it's a blanket mail that would get sent out to multiple people in the hopes that someone would click on that mail. And then the bad guys would say, all right, okay, someone's clicked on that mail, let's see what's going on. Whereas a spear phishing attack is more directed at you as an individual.
So where it could be they pose as my bank, and then they would send
or your PA, or one of your clients that you do business with.
This is massive right now, and it has been massive for the last year. So in your example, Lee, you could literally get a mail. Someone could be monitoring your social media, realize you're on leave, and your PA or your financial manager could get a mail that looks like it's from you. It is your email address, and it says it's addressed to her. Hi, Pam. As you know, I'm in Dahlstrom for the weekend. I've got an urgent payment that's just cropped up. Will you please release these funds? So that's a spear phishing attack, very targeted. They know what you're doing because they're watching LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera, and they know who's in your organization, who to target, and how to get the information that they need.
So even though we live with this technology and it's all so wonderful and it's evolutionary, I mean, it's also a case of Big Brother and the dark side of it.
Well, I think we've made our lives incredibly transparent. I mean, when you're in the public eye, like yourself, you share things on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and all the while somebody's following that digital path, and they're able to make up a convincing spear phishing attack.
Okay, so what happens if you get caught? What's the first thing you do?
Well, it depends on what you've been caught with. So a spear phishing attack, for instance, it might be too late. I was saying earlier, I just have a personal friend who doesn't use us for IT, thankfully, but he just got caught in a spear phishing attack. His financial director made a payment that's out of the bank account. Someone in an ATM somewhere withdrew all of the money they transferred, and there's nothing you can do.
So you'd actually know after the fact.
Yeah. So that's a a attack. A ransomware attack is a whole different.
And I want to go on to
which
ransomware because that's the height of wickedness, I'm sure. But how do you prevent phishing? What do you do?
Well, first and foremost, and as I said before again, awareness. You need to pay a bit more attention. Look at the type of email you're getting. You know, if it's so-and-so Gmail 1 and you're used to getting their work emails, you know, call that person. You know, make sure that, please, can you make this payment to their account or we're going to lose this deal. It happens all the time. CEOs, financial directors are getting this from CEOs all the time. But also to add on to your question is that, look, there are solutions in place. You know, for scanning your mails, doing obviously reputational or scanning on international servers to ensure that the type of emails getting sent through are either good or bad, so to speak, to kind of block that. But at the end of the day, as Simon was saying earlier, there's no silver bullet.
So
there's a sense of you having to just be aware and do due diligence to ensure awareness.
So let's focus on the height of wickedness, ransomware. I mean, it's just so invasive and absolutely horrible extortion. So if that happens to you, after quelling the panic, what do you do?
You restore your backup. In a perfect world, you have a backup, you just delete the encrypted data, you restore your backup and everything goes back to normal. Perfect world. A lot of SMEs, again, might not focus on backup as much as they should, and in that case, it's tough. There are very, very few ways to actually decrypt that data without the hacker. And a lot of SMEs lately, I think much more than we know about, are paying ransoms.
So would you say pay up or not?
I think, you know, I mean, they've got to make a personal call on it. The danger in paying up is, as any kind of extortion, is
There's
you
no
don't
guarantee.
Well, I think, you know, what makes the scam work is they do normally release the code to unlock the data. But there's no guarantee that it's not going to come back again or you're not going to get caught over and over. And I remember about 4 years ago, I was chatting to somebody in the insurance industry. They had a client. At the time, it was very hard to get hold of Bitcoin, and that was the only way you could pay the ransom. And this guy managed to open up an account, and he paid the ransom in Bitcoin, interacted with the hacker quite a bit, and about a month or two later, the hacker referred another person that had been hit with ransomware so that this guy could facilitate the cryptocurrency transaction.
That's a circle of wickedness. We're off to a short break now. Do stay with us.
32 countries, 75 innovative risk solutions, 100 years of experience. It all adds up to being the largest general insurer in Africa. Celebrating 100 years of insurance. Good and proper then, now, and always.